In 1852, construction began on a mansion just south of current-day Spring Hill, Tennessee. Rippavilla Plantation, as it is called today, was finished in 1855 and has stood the test of time for over 150 years and has earned a place in the National Registry of Historic Places. Built by Nathaniel Francis Chairs IV, Rippavilla has a storied past and is now one of Maury County's most revered historical places.
Rippavilla Plantation, the main house here, was constructed by Major Nathaniel Chairs and his wife Susan McKissick Chairs between 1852 and 1855. We are currently in the original dining room. The house is over 30,000 square feet. It is constructed of 330,000 handmade bricks from Mr. McKissick, Susan's father's brickyard down the street in Spring Hill. It has been a museum house since 1997. The Chairs were here until 1920. The Chairs had actually settled the property in 1811. And Mr. McKissick, Mrs. Chair's father, had given him all the brick and slave labor it would take to build the house as a dowry. They take him up on it 10 years after. They were married in 41, they come up here in 51.
Rippavilla and its grounds are located just south of Spring Hill, Tennessee. The plantation boasts 9 rooms across the main house and also features a courtyard and garden, as well as a newly built amphitheater on the south of the property.
We have been able to save a large portion of the battlefield here and also over on Keaton Road. The center part of the battle is on Keaton Road, but this is the area where the Federal Army got away that night. But it was slated to be big box store city, and it's now going to be soybeans and maybe a few markers. It's going to be marked. But very lucky to have it. And we have good neighbors here. We have cows and soybeans and the UT Extension Farm. Susan and Nat Chairs were married in 1841, and they were married until her death in 1893. They were married for 52 years. There is a family story that the reason it took 3 years to build this house was that Nathaniel, the major, had a problem with the mortar and the bricks bonding because of freezing temperatures. Supposedly the house was at the 50% point at least twice before he tore it down. It was rip, 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 where I don't know if that's where Rippavilla comes from or not, but anyway, third time's charm. He said he wanted the house to last for 100 years, and he's done that. We have sesquicentennial plus 10 here, I think. So
the family resided happily in the mansion until the outbreak of the Civil War.
Both Nat Chairs and his son Tom served in the Confederate Army. Nat attained the rank of major, was, as I said, had been the man who arranged terms of surrender at Fort Donelson. He was also a staff officer for Bedford Forest. Thomas attained the rank of sergeant. He was a Bedford Forest courier and dispatch rider. The house was occupied several times. In 1862, prior to the Battle of Shiloh, the 6th Kentucky U.S. Volunteer Infantry under a Union general by the name of William B. Nelson, Bull Nelson, occupied the house. From January until June of 1863, when the Confederates reoccupied this part of Middle Tennessee, Rippavilla will become headquarters to Nathan Bedford Forrest, who was a friend of the family. And that's when Tom joins the Army, Nathaniel rejoins. During the fighting here in November of 1864, there were several regiments on property, the 124th Indiana and the 26th Ohio. Now, it is here on the morning of November the 30th, 1864, that John Bell Hood in this room will give the orders to attack at Franklin. After the 18th of December, the house will serve for a brief period of time as a barracks for Union forces under James Wilson. In the winter of 1865, the house is seized by federal troops because Mrs. Chairs can't pay the taxes. The cotton had been seized the year before by federal troops and sold off. The house is declared surplus and abandoned, and she and the children are booted out for the second time during the war. And when Nathaniel comes home from the war with Tom in 1865 in June, they found the house is occupied by 25 squatters that had been what Granddaddy used to refer to as scallywags. They were Union sympathizers. He referred to them as carpetbaggers, but leaves a detailed account in his journal about evicting these people at the point of a gun barrel.
Taking a tour through the home, some of the rooms have been restored to what it may have looked like back in the 1800s.
This is the original dining room, and actually, of all the rooms in the house, this one tells the greatest story. The table and chairs that you're looking at were made here on property about 1811, 1812. They're slave-made pieces. On the morning of November the 30th, 1864, when John Bell Hood shows up here for hold a council of war, the room's totally empty. And you've heard all stories about huge banquet tables, and this is it. The pre-war furniture from this room is gone, and was gone midway through the war. This is actually the table and the chairs that Mrs. Sherris had sent up from the kitchen, and this is where the general sat. General Hood sitting right there. This is the grand parlor. In 1862, when General Nelson occupied the house, this room and the room behind you were used as a saloon, officers' club, the O Club, for federal officers. Mrs. Chair's music room. She was a very accomplished pianist, played the piano, the organ, the melodeon, the harpsichord, the guitar, and the zither, and had a beautiful voice as well. The furnishings in this room, the chairs behind me, along with the sofa, the music box, the secretary in the corner, the books, cloisonné ivory pieces, the carbide lamp and chair are original. This is the original study, Nathaniel Chair's study. The door over here would have gone into what was then the farm office. The door over my back still goes out into the courtyard. Because we have to do a lot of events still associated with dining rooms, we keep a big bulk of our post-war dining room collection over here. That will probably change eventually. The chandelier, as well as the other two chandeliers down here, are copies of 1855 gasoliers. Painting on the wall is a Washington Bogart Cooper painting, and it is done of a young lady named Lucy McKissick Gibson. She and Susan Chair's were first cousins. The painting is a Cooper, as I mentioned. Washington Bogart Cooper was probably the most eminent portrait painter in the pre-war South, or the antebellum South. The house still has one original slave house. We had probably close to 20, well, probably closer to 25 at one time. One still standing in the back. We have an 1855 barn that's still in good shape. The barn was actually used as a prisoner of war holding compound and as a hospital. We have one granary back there that hopefully is going to be restored. It's early 1800s. We still have the original family cemetery, and the slave cemetery is also on property. And just a myriad of other things that we keep tripping over in the yard from time to time. We still find relics here from the war. Now, we have been told, and there is some evidence, that the federal dead who were buried here were removed to Stones River National Battlefield Cemetery in 1866. The Confederate dead that were buried here, and possibly out behind the barn and scattered on the battlefield as well, have never been removed. There may be as many as 100 Confederate dead still on property, and maybe a few federal soldiers they missed too. And if you doubt that, just hang around here sometime at night. See and hear things that will make you question your Sunday school teacher.